Do you ever just lay back and close your eyes and give up all hope of productivity and stare off into space, thinking of absolutely nothing? And then suddenly, these ideas come crashing down on you. Does that ever happen to people? Because this episode is the product of that process that has recently happened to me. So I hope it's enjoyable, and I hope you take something out of it. Hello there. Welcome to the Good.Enough.Shrink podcast. We are your hosts. I am Jenna Chang, a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist practicing here in Los Angeles, California.
And I'm Dr. Patrick Kelly. I am also a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist practicing in the Los Angeles area.
We are on a mission to demystify child psychiatry and have conversations surrounding difficult topics on youth and adult mental health, but not without a little play along the way. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, I wanted to talk about a topic that's been on my mind quite a lot recently, especially with the past year ending and now this new year starting, which is the topic of finding motivation. Motivation to change, to start something, to do something. And this often comes up in my work when people are trying to finish school or find a job or start a new project, quit smoking and drinking, or even just stopping scrolling mindlessly on their phones. Really doing anything that is outside of your status quo. When this comes up, the very first thing I bring up is the idea of ambivalence, which means that you are simultaneously wanting to change and stay the same. So those who are familiar with motivational interviewing and addiction treatment will know how important ambivalence is, because when you give ambivalence space and respect, then it tells you so much about you. You know, when you express ambivalence, it is a source of deep understanding of yourself. The trick is, though, that you're not actually looking for an answer. You're just looking to be aware. So we have good days and bad days, and you just want to be aware of what makes you tick and what makes you happy. And this is because it brings you into the present moment. The presence and the here and now is the beginning of truly healing and feeling better, because you're not running away from the thing that is in front of you. And this is the thing that most of us struggle with, right? To be able to sit with that uncomfortable emotion without turning to drugs or alcohol or binge eating or binge watching, or working too much. You know, workaholics are also part of this. And so I can imagine that some of us might be like, well, why would I want to think so much about the ambivalence? Why do I want to constantly think about what I want to change but can't? So let's pull back just a little bit and think about this. When you realize you have a problem, you set goals because you know you need to change. Now, these goals are the foundation for how crappy you will feel in this journey. Okay, so if you're dismissive of your ambivalence and you move on too quickly to setting up goals, you often create goals that are too difficult to attain. And then when you can't achieve them, you feel awful about yourself. And then there's the guilt and the shame and the endless loop of self-loathing because you failed. So that's why it's so important to step back and look at the present moment and what is happening to you that is leading to this ambivalence. Again, this is what they say a lot in addiction treatment, which is a pause and self-reflection can be worth 50 AA meetings because you're really stopping and thinking about what's important to you, what matters to you, and you're using actively your mind and your brain to think about how is this going to help you or not help you. This is essentially your prefrontal cortex activating. So your goal setting is not going to be driven by this emotion of feeling bad about yourself. And then I got to change. So I got to make, these drastic changes. It's not driven by that. It's instead driven by the executive function part of the brain that can weigh the pros and cons and look at the big picture, the prefrontal cortex rather than the amygdala, which is the emotion center. And so when you look at the big picture, you might be able to actually see then how you have so much stacked against you. This is really, really important. So I'm going to say it again. When you look at the big picture through a calm and neutral lens, you realize how many odds are against you. This is not to create a sense of self-pity or helplessness, although you might feel those emotions, but that's not the point here. The point is that you learn to sit with them, and then you start to feel a sense of lightness and warmth and compassion for what you have done. A compassion for all of the things that you've been able to achieve with the cards you were dealt with, because you're doing the best you can. You truly are doing the best you can. This compassionate approach to change is, I think, relatively new. It may be in the last couple of decades, because in the past, people were very forceful about making change happen, right? You got to do this and this and that. If you got to follow steps 1, 2, 3. But we've found over the years in research and in clinical work that it doesn't really work. If it works, it's temporary, or it's not a solid enough foundation that relapse is very likely. So that's why it's so important, if you can, thinking about this in a big picture sense, if you can generate a teeny bit of kindness for yourself, that you're doing your very best, it really sets the foundation for your goal setting. So while you're giving your ambivalence the space to be expressed and to be cried about, to be angry about, it naturally goes to the second step, which is to really think about your values. I want to graduate high school. I want to buy a car. I want to buy a house, a dog. I want a stable job. I want to leave a mark in history. Whatever it is, what part of you, the question is, what part of you makes you want this? Is it the bright-eyed, ambitious little kid in you that wanted to rule the world? Is it the organized, I want to check this off my list part of you? Is it the spontaneous, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just want to try it, the adventure part of you? Whatever it might be, ambition, financial security, spontaneity, being busy, or being useful, whatever your value is, you really want to think about what matters to you. And at this point, sometimes people will say to me, I don't know what I want. Listen, I barely was able to choose which socks I wanted to wear this morning. I have no idea what I want in my future. So when this happens, when people don't know what they want at all, it is so good. I love starting here, because it's like you have a clean slate. You have nothing. And the realizing of this nothingness is, it brings up a lot of feelings, usually some sort of discontentment and dissatisfaction, but it also brings up the question of, what are you afraid of? What scares you? What's the worst thing that can happen when you don't do anything? And this is so hard. It is so vulnerable. It's so sensitive, and it's so hard, but it's so necessary. If you're familiar with CBT, you'll know this trick, the best and worst case scenarios. Usually you fall somewhere in the middle. And also this is part of DBT and taking the middle path. And if you're psychodynamically or psychoanalytically oriented, you'll also know this trick of highlighting and bringing to the surface the darkness in your unconscious that holds on to your biggest fears that you cannot speak of. But you cannot understand what you cannot speak of. So, what are you afraid of? Is it failure? Is it disapproval, uncertainty, unpredictability, boredom, emptiness, fear itself? FDR famously said that. And of course, that was so brilliant, because it was, this showcasing of how anxiety plays into this. He essentially told the American public, look inside yourself. What in the world is happening to you? It's like a makeshift therapy session on a podium. So we actually, have a word for this. It's called phobophobia. It's the fear of fear. So anyway, you have a lot of things that might come up as you explore what you want, what you don't want, what's important to you, or lack thereof, and what scares you. And now you are ready to set your goals. And this is why therapy and any form of change takes so long, because you have to kind of go through all of these motions of, knowing where you're at and what makes you be in that place to then finally set proper goals. Because at this point, the goals that you're setting are going to be truly fitting for you in this very moment in time. So for example, like right now, are you at a place where you need someone's help? Do you need to be joining a community of people to inspire you and get you moving? Or are you in a place where you want to do things yourself? You want to figure things out yourself because it's so important to actually not ask for help right now. Are you in a place where you need to really reevaluate your life and do a complete overhaul? Or are you in a place where you just need like a little bit of push? You're just almost there, right? Again, I want to emphasize this very moment in time because I am wheeling you back into the present moment. This present moment is really all you need. If you can find what works for you now, it allows you to reconnect with you, reconnect with your body, your mind, and that allows you to trust yourself again. And that self-trust, that self-confidence is so important for any time you want to make a change. Change is so scary. Change is precarious. And if you can find it in you to believe in yourself, to believe that you can pull off this change, that's it. End of sentence, period. If I can get someone to start to believe that they can do something, my work is done. So here we now come to the final stage, which is taking action. Taking action is, funny enough, it is initially about control. Like you take hold of the situation, you start acting. It's about control. And then once it lifts off, it's about letting go. You have no control over how this is going to go. So you did everything you could. You studied your butt off. You worked really, really hard to impress your boss. You did all your research to start a project, and now you let it go and you follow the flow of that process. There is a natural path of up and down that comes with change. And if you pause long enough, then you might start to enjoy the actual journey and the process rather than the end result. And that is the true nature of change. Change is about the path, and change is about timing. So I have found this in like every aspect of therapy and therapeutic interaction, but timing is everything. For example, if you have someone who's thinking of quitting smoking, and right off the bat you say, yeah, it's time for you to quit smoking. That is very different from having that person go through their feelings and thoughts, open up to you, share with you all the positives and negatives of smoking, and then realizing that it's more harm than good. And then you say, it's time for you to quit smoking. That is so much more powerful. This is the kind of self-realized, self-driven kind of change that we strive for because they last a long time, and we're in it for the long haul. So I hope that was helpful. We would love to hear from you if you had questions or comments or any sort of feedback. So please leave us a message or a comment. And Happy New Year to everyone, and we'll see you back here very soon.